You got the boys with the toys in the basement making noise?
Hello and welcome to Andy's Little Sci-Fi Horror Show. My name's Andy. This is my little 10-minute window to the rest of the world. Today is Wednesday, April something. That's really not important. What's on my mind right now is I just got back from work a little while ago and I had a chance to decompress, and I'm back to working directly with the kindergarten through 5th grade students again. I missed it and I'm back and it's awesome. That's not what this episode's about. I have lunch break with a group of kindergarten kids. They don't really eat. They 1,000 questions a minute. One of them, though, he's really intent lately on building a time machine. And his big grand plan is to get a trash can with a lid. Always be reminded it's got to have a lid. And some plasma and a cage on top of that lid. And then you put it on there and the plasma will drip down over the can. And apparently there's electrons in the plasma that will make this trash can go back in time. It's a good start. I don't think he's fully thought it through the whole idea, but I like where his head is at. And of course, when you're sitting in there and they're explaining that, this kid's got this, it's my uncle's birthday tomorrow kind of thing, all of that kind of stuff. I was listening to all the questions and someone had asked it, but they jumped on to another subject fast as I could be. And sometimes they can be really insightful, intriguing questions. They don't even realize they're asking them. Some of them get dark and morbid. I had a friend of mine that say, the kid asked that, and I'm like, if you're surprised by the morbid and twisted thoughts of a child, then you probably don't work with children.
Ah, children. My daughter saw me getting dry skin off my shoulder after bad sunburn and asked if she could keep my skin flakes and put them in a jar so when I die she can make a mummy mask to remember me always.
But again, I digress. That's not what this is about. Back to this time machine. There was a question in the midst of all the this and that, and this turkey tastes funny and that kind of thing. The question in my mind was posed, hypothetically, let's say you have a time machine. You get into the time machine and you set the coordinates to go back in time. And you engage your go, you're on your way. And you die. Right then and there. You go back in time. Are you alive or are you still dead? Now, of course, the immediate thought is, well, you're alive, of course. Because you're back in time. It never happened. But that goes against Einstein's theory of relativity, the classic E equals mc squared. E is the energy, and motion is the mass, and all that. I'm not going to bore you with the whole explanation, but the short-end example is the two cars driving on the highway. You're in a car traveling 40 miles an hour, and another car comes up behind you, they're traveling 60 miles an hour, and your passenger's with you. You're both in the car, stationary, relative to each other. You're not moving. You're just basically side by side, elbow to elbow, driving 40 miles an hour down a highway. A car passes you going 60 miles an hour. You're relative to the car and the passenger, they're only passing you 20 miles an hour because you're going 40 and they're going 60. Simple math. But if the two cars were passing by a person on the side of the road, they're going 60 miles an hour and we're going 40 miles an hour. Even though relative to the car passing us, they're only going 20 miles an hour. We're not going anywhere. Collectively, altogether, we're passing the person on the side of the road 60 and 40 miles an hour. Simple enough concept. The same thing happens here. That's right, I'm bringing Einstein's theory of relativity to this kindergarten question. But trust me, that's not that uncommon. To the machine, if you're in the time machine, your coordinates that you set are relative to you. Your mindset in your being travels with you, or does it? Now that goes to two different theories. Unfortunately, time travel isn't possible in our reality yet, but probably it won't be until we can clearly define what time actually is. Is time a fabric in space that can be ripped, altered, and folded? Some people believe that to be true. There's the theory of the black hole and the collective mass making a black hole. It's a whole different subject another time. Some people believe that time is a ribbon, and some people believe that time isn't a physical, tangible anything, and basically it's just a mindset of memories and collective cognitive thoughts. And that would make time travel completely impossible. So let's just go with the fact that maybe time travel is possible and you actually are in your time machine, set the coordinates, in your compacted little garbage can or whatever you're going to be in, and you travel back in time right after you set the things, and you died on the spot, would you arrive there alive? I got to tell you, I don't know. But what we can do is we can go to the movies. Because unfortunately, like I said, time travel in reality is not ready yet, but in the movies it does exist. Let's just go with Back to the Future. The DeLorean. You climb in the DeLorean, boom, you go back in time, or you go into the future, what have you. There's evidence in the movie that Einstein, the dog, Einstein got into the time machine to test it. He sent him 1 minute into the future, and he came back. Doc Brown and Einstein, the dog's watch, were 1 minute off from each other, which is the first evidence that you get that the inside of the DeLorean is your own cognitive world. Another evidence of this is in Back to the Future Part 2, when Biff from the future found a Gray's Almanac, went back in time, and gave it to himself, and then came back in the future because he's starting to have like a heart attack as he walks out of the DeLorean and he breaks his cane, and that's how they find the headpiece. That's how they know that Biff stole the DeLorean to go back with the sports almanac, whatever the hell it is. So, by that theory, you would remain dead. Set the coordinates in the DeLorean, drove back 88 miles an hour, but you died. Just because you went back in time, you wouldn't be alive. The other obvious movie reference we have is H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. Which that poses other problems alone. There's not even a chassis around you, so you're clearly in the same organic reality in that particular time machine. You basically set the coordinates, you pull the levers, and the wheel starts behind you, and it gets all dizzy. And it looks really cool on camera, but the practicality of that is that's not a vehicle of time and space. It's just of time. Basically, you're stuck. If you're in Tucson, Arizona, when you in the time machine, you go back in time. You're still back in time in Tucson, Arizona. It's stuck in that one location, no matter what happens. Whether it's become a riverbed that they flooded over, whether there's a concrete building that's been built there, you're screwed, because that's exactly where you're going to materialize. The DeLorean was much more of a practical thing, because the car stays on the road, and usually roads don't change that much, except, you know, if you're Old Man Peabody's tree lot.
What is it for?
Looks like an airplane without wings.
As long as you're not a pine tree, you're all set. But the real posed question is, if you travel back in time, even if you're not moving in space, are you dead? Interesting. There's another theory, evidence that if you drive in a DeLorean, you died in a DeLorean, you'd be dead in the past no matter where you went, is evident in Part 2 when Marty McFly goes back in time, and they come back to 1985, and Biff's rich, and he's got all this money. And the cognitive mind of Marty McFly that went from 1980s to the past, back to the 85 of an alternate dimension, he didn't realize what was going on. So
So you remember you gave me detention last week?
Last week, the school burnt down 6 years ago. Now you got exactly 3 seconds to get off my porch with your nuts intact. 1.
Oh, please, Mrs. Strickland, I just want to know what the hell's going on here.
Go!
Ah!
just because he traveled into that time and space, he didn't collectively instantly get all the knowledge of updates and all this kind of stuff too. Which makes sense from a theatrical point of view and a storytelling point of view, because it gives you the character vulnerability, like, what the hell's going on here? Why is everything so different? I'm in 1985, but he had no idea what was going on. So, relative to the space compacted into the DeLorean itself, you take what you got with you. You know, you're like Luke Skywalker and Dagobah.
What's in there?
Only what you take with you.
Yeah, I threw the little Empire Strikes Back in there. I'll ponder this a little bit more. I've only had a chance to think about it a little bit because I just got back from work. But it's interesting. Is time cognitive space? And if time is a cognitive space, would you get the knowledge of the pre-existing era you're actually jumping into? If you're jumping into the future, do you automatically get the knowledge of the future? And if you do you take that knowledge back to the past with you? Or is time and space a fabric that can be ripped, folded, and manipulated? I don't know. But it was an interesting question, and it made me think, and I thought I'd share that with you. Right now, I'm going to drink my iced coffee and investigate this a little bit further in the movies. But as far as this cognitive right now goes, my name's Andy. Good night.